What are you building?
We are taking EEG technology from a lab into everyday life.
The idea of like conscious marketing makes me kind of want to jump out the window.
We are expecting $150 billion.
A lot of what you say, I don't believe.
You can literally see as it is increasing and draw a straight line to Stripe and see churn go up.
That's not an excuse.
They told me that they want our service.
Convince investors to invest in you irrationally early, convince people to join your team irrationally early, convince people to buy your product irrationally early. Like, that's it. You need to figure out those three things.
Welcome our next founder up.
All right,
Round of
let's do
applause. Awesome. What's your name?
My name is Duygu.
Say it one more time.
Duygu.
Duygu?
Yes, it's a Turkish name.
You have a minute to tell us what you're building. Are you ready to tell us?
Yes, I am ready.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Duygu Özen. I am founder of V7. Imagine a world where marketing not only drives growth, but also creates positive impact on society and environment. And as a conscious entrepreneur and digital marketing professional over 15 years, I truly witness marketing can create growth and impact together. And today, 72% of consumers wants to see businesses as a conscious business. And this is where V7 AI step in. V7 AI is a SaaS platform to bring together sustainable development goals and conscious marketing principles together for creating actionable recommendations for companies. Thank you.
All right, under a minute. I'm not sure I'm following what the product is. So why don't we get into that a little bit? What's the product literally?
V7 AI is a SaaS platform to giving the conscious marketing services for companies, but we are bringing together sustainable development goals, frameworks, and conscious marketing principles together under our technology.
And so do I buy it in place of paying like a consultancy that would otherwise come in and tell me how to build more conscious products and marketing?
Yes,
campaigns?
right now we are on the MVP stage. For example, if you subscribe to our MVP, you will have your conscious weekly marketing plan, like what you need to share on social media or what type of blog articles you need to create. But all these marketing content and communication, and also, of course, your marketing funnels related to conscious marketing principles. It means we are not manipulating. We are not using the fear-based marketing. This is all about the company's mission and the vision, which is related to SDGs.
What is the difference between the version of marketing that I think of in my head and the version of this more sustainable or conscious marketing that you have in yours?
The big difference is actually the traditional marketing focusing mostly selling something, or we are communicating with discounts, but the conscious marketing focusing to leaders or companies' mission and vision, why they are existence. And this is the part of their marketing strategies.
And do your customers, in your mind, they use both this sort of more traditional sales driven, but they also do this as part of their brand? Or do you imagine them totally shifting? Like, you think I can sell my widget as well if I don't discount it, if I just tell people it's good, it's better?
Totally, actually, there's a transformation. I am giving the consultation about the V7, and after having all these clients, and then I decided this year supporting with artificial intelligence. And then there's 7 steps, and step by step, we are transforming every steps. The marketing funnels, blog articles, website, and all of them, even the search engine optimization.
Got it.
The world is ready to this, and this is the time right now. There's a huge paradigm shift about the marketing and conscious businesses, regenerative economy, and whatever we call.
Yeah.
And it's the reason we are creating this tool right now.
I don't feel familiar with that demand, so help me understand it, right? Like I'll be honest for the sake of pushing our conversation forward. All I hear is maybe just like a version of marketing where you make some money by helping me market a different way. Convince me that this is part of some zeitgeist, some trend that I'm not familiar with.
Of course. And right now we are expecting $150 billion impact economy by 2030. Right now, there is a huge shift about the businesses, about their existence. And then we can call, like I mentioned, is a regenerative business or conscious business. And the consumers wants to see businesses not just focusing the profit, but the purpose. This is what we need. It's the reason United Nations defined the 17 different problems about the world and pushing right now with regulations to transform the businesses to support to that causes. You can support the climate change or, the other type of problems about the world, but how you will implement into your marketing without any greenwashing.
So I, as free agency, as a tech startup focused on careers and job search, I should be focused also on climate change, or you're helping me tell my purpose?
Our artificial intelligence technology is find out which values you need to support. There are 17 causes. There are a few questions under our technology, and we understand your business, your market, as a leader, your values, and then we are recommended. There is a SDG 9 or SDG 11 you can support. And the other steps, we are giving the recommendations how you can implement into your marketing.
And so you're selling into maybe a movement that is, in your mind, it's happening now, but it's in the earlier days. It's not like most companies are not doing this. That's the opportunity you see. And so how have you found, both on the consulting you were doing and then with this product, how have you found this sort of what makes somebody make this decision today versus a year from now? The head of marketing for a brand, whether it's your business, somebody else, you show up, you get in the room, you talk to them. Sort of, is the urgency that their consumers are going to flock somewhere else? Is that you're sort of saying to them in a year you're going to be going down? If you're Lululemon, you pick a company, somebody else is going to take your business from you. Is that sort of the urgency driver, or is it something different?
Right now, the McKinsey, I think, to launch a white paper, and especially for the new Generation Z, they are so different. They don't want to just to buy something. They want to see the companies. If I am buying something, I have to know that company is supporting something about the world. They are creating impact for their employees or for the world, for their stakeholders. The huge changes is about, I think, our buying behavior.
Yeah.
Can I give some harsh feedback and then maybe some positive thing to wrap it? A lot of what you say, I don't believe. And I do think there's this disconnect right now between what I assume your world that you're coming from, a more UN, you've mentioned multiple times, and their principles and goals. You're not the first founder to mention this set of UN principles that seems to be infiltrating a class of individuals who are paying attention to the UN. I never pay attention to the UN. The idea of conscious marketing makes me kind of want to jump out the window. I'm going to come to you in a second, but that's my reaction. That doesn't mean you can't sell me something. As an investor, as a startup person, et cetera. Let me tell you the difference. When you mentioned the 23 stat of, I don't know how many, $80 billion you might have said. I don't know what that means, and that seems like a floating number. When you mentioned that people are going to change their buying behavior because there's purpose, I go, maybe Gen Z is just going to get older and they'll get tired of everything like everybody else does. But there's something real in what you're talking about, which is companies believe this is happening. Lululemon is something, like a business believes this is happening. A CMO believes this is happening. Now, I think that CMO is dumb. And I think that CMO is going to misallocate this budget. That's just me. However, you could convince me that CMO is going to spend money on this problem over the next 5 years. You can convince me that a marketing department at a large Fortune 500 wants very much for their marketing to not make any mistakes and potentially to latch on to moments, whether they be societal, whether they be global, whether they be causes or cause-based. Their employees might request it of them, so HR departments are going to spend this way. So while I don't believe in a lot of the higher level and higher order inspiration that is driving you, there's still something to the business that you are suggesting, and the AI you're suggesting might enable a marketing department or people within a marketing department to build in ways that I do believe and I know they are building in, and where they're spending their time, their energy, and money to do these things that I don't believe in, but it's still a real thing. And I would suggest that if your pitch plays a little bit of both roles, because you should live your truth and say, no, these principles are happening and you should know about it. Sure, give me that half the time. But the other half the time, perhaps give the more, let's call it abstracted version of the pitch, or maybe it's less abstracted, I don't know. But it's the version that I'm empathetic to, which is what's the business use case for this? Even if you're not somebody who believes all these things are happening in the world, what's the business use case for you as an investor to understand there's money to be made And it's not just because I'm so greedy. I'm not as greedy as I'm suggesting here, but at least it gives me a sense of if I don't believe in X, there's still something interesting in what she's building in Y. And so again, that's my honest feedback about kind of parts of this, and I think that still leaves an opening for you in the rest of it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts?
I mean, look, I think you actually may have covered a lot of what I was thinking, but I think the big question I had, like as you were talking and then as you responded, was I just want to get sort of more concrete on this is sort of what we sell, what it costs, the budget it comes out. So that again, it's not dissimilar from earlier when I was talking about this. I want you to help me to understand what is the market I'm investing in? Like, are you going to sell $80 billion worth of product? No, that's not what you're pitching. Like that number was a different number. I think the question is, we actually think the marketing department spend, we've done the research, $10,000 to $50,000 a year on these problems today. We believe that's going to grow 10x over the next 10 years. And we sell a solution to that, which today is bought and in the future is going to be 10 times bigger. And so we're going to enter the market, we're going to go there. And so I think it's just a little bit more, it's less abstract. It's to me, it's more of we sell this to this person for this amount, and you could be ranges. Obviously you don't have to be exact. You're probably early in this, but to sort of help me to understand that buyer and their mindset.
I see. Yes, we have actually like these numbers and calculations on our pitch, but this is 1 minute.
Yeah, totally.
I'm rooting for you as a founder. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll relate that to, for me, crypto and blockchain, Web3. If you've ever been to a Fragrancy anything, a lot of people find out very quickly that I am not just skeptical, I'm anti. I think.
So you own 0 Bitcoin?
I have never until 2022, I want to say, owned or interacted with any blockchain or crypto until I just, as a product person, I always had the temptation of like, I should understand the user experience of this. And so finally I decided to buy some amount of Bitcoin. The product experience was actually awful. I actually don't think I finished the transaction, so maybe I can still claim this. I started the Coinbase thing and then the KYC got in the way and I was like, I do not want to upload my passport and all that jazz. So I say this because, so that's an area I'm skeptical of, or even anti. But there have been 2 pitches at the feedback loop, which we've been recording since Mayish, that were blockchain oriented. I'll use one of them who I've called out now. This will be like the 4th time fine at Blaze. It's like a payments app, kind of like a Venmo that uses USDC as its foundational currency for transactions, which allows them to do international payments more easily. And so it's like Venmo, but no matter where you are, you can kind of interact with or transact with another person. And I might politically disagree with that because I don't like the blockchain. I don't like decentralization. I want an army behind my money. But I go, as a business, if I'm politically not going to win over the next 5-10 years and this business could exist, then Blaze is a good idea. If USDC is a thing and he uses it as a rails and those rails allow him to illegally move money around legally, then sure, that's a good idea. And so I think for a lot of these pitches that might be in areas where you don't know if the other person on the other side is a believer, it's useful, and that's what he did. It's useful to talk a little bit more in the opportunity.
Right.
And the fans of the thing that you're building in, blockchain or causes, will still love the potential. They'll hear it already. You don't need to tell them.
Yeah.
But the other folks need to hear a little bit of the opportunity.
We've talked about marketing a couple times, and this is something that, actually, I'll pull this back to something we did at WeWork that was it was a contentious decision, which in hindsight is hilarious that it was. But for years, we struggled with what should be center stage on WeWork.com. Should it be book an office or like do what you love? And the mission and the vision and the experience and the movement of solopreneur, small business owner, entrepreneur, that's going to be the future. And there's 2 frames of thought, right? One is, well, that's the bigger picture, right? I don't want somebody to just buy an office. I want them to buy an office and be a part of this and stay for decades. The flip side is, if you showed up at the site and what you wanted was to buy an office and you landed on like magic, you'd be like, well, I want an office. If your bank said to you, the future is you're going to be magically successful and we're the place to go to be successful, you kind of be like, that doesn't sound like a safe place for my money.
Where's the sign-in button?
Like, yeah, I want to be able to open an account and I want to know the account is backed by a government that's got an army. And I think this comes down to when you're pitching, there's a shift that you do when you know that somebody is predisposed to an idea versus not. It's hard to do in a show context like this because you may not get as much ability to research. But when you are going to pitch your company, it is so important to show up and know that you don't believe in crypto being a great thing for the world. Let's say, make this up. Or you don't believe it's going to exist or whatever. Or I tend to, feel a certain way about certain categories where I'm like, I'm good with that. Like we mentioned, regulatory in one of the pitches, whether or not it was legal to accept packages. I've done very well in regulatory gray businesses when they've started. Like, we'll figure it out later.
Right.
Jackpocket was one of those companies. We're going to go and get your lottery tickets and make them digital and you can win the lottery, right? Just a huge exit to DraftKings. But when they started, we weren't sure if it was legal for them to do that.
Right.
But they found ways around it. They were a delivery company. And I'm okay with that. So if you're coming to pitch me a company that maybe made a little bit more regulatory hurdles or whatever, I may be more predisposed to say, I'm good with that. Like when he said, well, that lawyer's deal, that I really do mean, like, that's not a pre-seed, that's not a pre-seed problem.
Totally.
Like, don't solve for that. It doesn't mean go out and do illegal things, but like, let's know we can solve. There's some way that people have boxes.
Let's know the problem's interesting first before we even ask ourselves that question.
People have boxes that you put your packages into.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can solve for it.
Yeah.
So I think knowing your audience when you're pitching, whether again it's sales, fundraising, is really important, and you can deliver a pitch slightly differently.
Totally. Love that. So welcome next founder up.
Let's do it.
Round of applause. Next founder up. All right. Antonio, you have a minute. Are you ready to tell us what you're building?
Yes.
What are you building? And don't forget to hold that mic up there.
Like this?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. 1 out of 4 people listening are completely overwhelmed by stress. And I had chronic stress myself too. I was anxious, irritable, and overweight. And I wasn't aware of it. Eventually, I got myself an Apple Watch to get immediate feedback on my calorie burn and exercise. And I lost 40 pounds in 12 months. Yet it took me 7 years to get into a better state of mind by experimenting with mindfulness. And the key to that journey was to label my emotions, but the lack of that immediate feedback slowed down my progress. At Aware, we're building the wearable that provides you with that immediate feedback to self-regulate your emotions. It's a smart ear cuff coupled with an AI coach that maps your brainwaves with actionable, personalized tips through the mobile app. It reminds you when to take breaks and how to develop new healthy habits. We are a strong team of engineers and neuroscientists from UCSF, Stanford, and NYU. We are funded by Techstars, and we are going to launch our pre-seed round next week.
That's a minute.
Thank you.
So you're wearing it, right?
I am, yeah.
Can we see?
Of course, yeah. This is industrial design.
I'll hold it up to the camera.
While you hold it up, I'm curious, in healthcare wearables in particular, there's been this interesting divide of the like prosumer professional, right? The Whoop bracelet, like very detailed as far as the data and then the sort of more mass consumer appeals. You're wearing an Apple Watch as well. Compare the difference between the quality of results between the Apple Watch tracking your heart rate, your oxygen, your sort of the things it does, and then wearing this, sort of how much better is it, or how different is the results that you get from this?
Absolutely. So first of all, we are using a very different technology than all the other wearables. It's EEG. We are literally taking EEG technology from a lab into everyday life. And EEG measures your brainwaves. So it's a much more direct measures of your central nervous system, as opposed, of course, to HRV. It's more autonomic nervous system. So there is that difference. If you try to tap into your emotions, you get more precise information through EEG.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is how, so if the Apple Watch was like, all right, your heart rate's elevated, you're probably stressed, like they sort of do tell you so, or you should get up and walk, or is that good enough for most consumers and this is like 10% better, or are you like, no, this, like the Apple Watch should go away, it doesn't actually know any of these things?
It's really a different thing. With the Apple Watch, you're measuring mainly your physical stress, and here we're measuring more your mental stress.
Okay.
So can I ask the question slightly differently? There's a world in which measuring your physical stress is actually as good as measuring your emotional stress, because maybe our body emits a lot as a result of our psychology. And so maybe a different version of this question is, from an efficacy standpoint, is there evidence to EEG and brainwaves being some amount more efficacious?
Yes, there is. Yeah. Definitely. There's a neuroscience experiment. There's lots of literature in the last 10 years of neuroscience literature on mapping emotions to EEG signal to emotions. Of course, backed also by our neuroscience research. We're doing a lot of experiments and tests, constantly testing the technology to put in a form factor that is like this portable.
I think, I want to hear so much more, but just to make a point on this, I think a lot of what you just said needs to be part of your pitch. Like today, the devices do heart rate and a bunch of other physicality tracking. And what we're doing is EEG, which is brainwave tracking. The hypothesis of this is the motions, falling out of this can provide much more instructional self-awareness. And
and I would just say prior to therapy and getting sober, I was a hotter-headed person, right? It was easier to anger. I actually don't know the science behind it. Would the Apple Watch have said, hey, chill out when I got angry about something? Or would it have said, no, I mean, if you're not running around and jumping around and screaming and yelling, it would have just sort of been oh, you're sitting there. You're stewing on these feelings. You're angry, but you're not running around. And you would say, no, this will know.
Exactly. And a practical example is that when I do 2-hour workout, my Apple Watch tells me I'm very stressed.
Right.
Which is rather the opposite. I'm actually very relaxed. That's the best
I would be stressed in a 2-hour workout.
Okay.
I would be stressed in a workout, period. I mean, that's interesting because I think, again, his framing here is helping me and the conversation's helping me more than the pitch. And so this is maybe where I modify the pitch, where even him is going, you could say words like, I don't know if this is true, the Apple Watch would not tell you at the end of a long day X, it'd tell you Y.
Yeah.
But Aware tells you X. And so, being very direct in that before and after essentially is what you're telling as a pitcher. Some pitches are before and after, and that's amazing. You have the ability to tell before and after pitch because of the physicality.
Yeah, and so moving from this point, just I want to make sure we get in a bit more to why you're building this and the impact it would have. So this touches on what I was trying to get at with the Whoop comment. That's made for the professional athlete. Most people don't use it. Most people have an Apple Watch, and so help me understand the audience for this in your mind today and then the future. Maybe your view is 100% of people should be wearing this in the future, but today, is it people in high stress jobs specifically? Is it, people with challenges?
Yeah, we have interviewed a lot of consumers specifically for the Oura Ring first. Yeah. And now, of course, since we launched our pre-order on our website at wear.us, we are interviewing our own customers and we are asking why you're doing this. And kind of the common theme we're seeing is tech entrepreneurs, corporate executives, they're working under a lot of pressures and they need to self-regulate themselves in real time. You're in the middle of the meeting. They want to see what's happening to their nervous system so they can do even just 5 seconds breathing and calm down, and you have a much more productive meeting after that. So that's definitely our ECP. We see a lot of patterns and clusters also in professional moms who just became moms. And so their stress level at home is significantly increased. And they need a closed loop feedback to really self-regulate themselves. So we believe that that's our first customers. But we can see also sports like tennis. Of course, the US Open is happening right now. And it's a mental game.
They're all very stressed right now. I can tell you that. It's only half a joke, though. It's for some roles, you may just be look, you don't need to know if you're stressed about going and playing tennis in front of millions of people. You kind of do know you're stressed and you probably aren't going to in real time say, never mind, I'm going to get rid of my stress. But I maybe you will. I mean, I feel like that one may be a little bit out there, but I guess I'm curious about your approach to the market, how you think about sort of selling to that ICP. Are they buying, again, instead of an Apple Watch or in addition to, are they sort of thinking about this a lot, or the Oura Ring you brought up as an example? What does sort of the early look like?
Yeah, I think it's very complementary to the Oura Ring and to the Apple Watch, the Whoop, because it's different kind of information. Our long-term vision, what we see here for Aware is to monitor constantly your brain, the health of your brain and mind continuously. So if you think of it, we go our entire life without ever getting a brain scan. When was the last time you got a brain scan?
I don't know.
You don't remember, right? I got it 4 months ago because of my work, right? And I learned a lot about my brain scan. But we go through our entire life without a brain scan. And so then we wonder why we have strokes, burnout, stress, neurodegenerative disease. So the point of long-term...
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Even in the context of a longer conversation, I would caution you from going to the places you just went. Because I don't yet, and you might yet convince me, have any evidence that you're going to solve that problem with this device. That doesn't mean you won't. I have no idea. But it sets up my skepticism alarms.
Yeah.
As soon as you said the word stroke, I was like, hold on.
Yeah.
These things seem to have generally now been abandoned by the scientific crowd. People who use an Apple Watch and an Oura Ring and a Whoop and even an 8 Sleep. 8 Sleep does temperature, so I think people like it for that. But there are other devices. Anything doing tracking, it seems to me, the crowd that is on Twitter and talks about this all the time and watches the Huberman videos all the time, all that stuff, they've gone, actually, on the margins, this is mostly wrong and not useful.
Yeah.
Also, the patches came out of style. The glucose monitors.
Yeah.
They were hyped, and now everyone was showing off their levels patch. I haven't heard about levels in a while. And I say this to say, you don't want to put in my brain, oh, this is another one of those things that's going to make big claims, but the actionability is not going to be there, because you had great examples of when an executive wants to notice so they can change something. It's funny, like, you're not just making people aware, right? Like, your tagline should almost be, we don't just make you aware, we make it actionable, right? Like, you're telling us, and this hopefully is true, that the difference between this and that in an Apple Watch is something significant enough where you don't need to tell some sort of far-off story about strokes. And again, you might in a longer conversation, but only once you've convinced the people and the investors on the other side that you have that credibility, or they get excited about it, because otherwise, again, you triggered my skepticism brain. I want to go back to a question he asked. He asked about, so that's, I just want to wrap on that.
Yeah, that's great feedback, yeah.
And I say that positively, right? It's because I was so into it, and I went, hold on. So the other thing he asked about was this notion of what does it replace? And you said complementary. I'm just curious. I have I have 4 different devices that I can put on my head other than an earbud. So I mostly walk around with Bose earbuds. But I have 4 other devices I can walk around with. I have Bose's cuff earbuds now. So I have the thing that wraps around the ear. I have the Shocks thing that you can put around your head, and it doesn't have anything to your ear. It's kind of like vibrating and playing out of speakers. I have Facebook's or Meta's Ray-Ban glasses. And there's like this loop thing, which is kind of like an earbud. It mostly just looks different. In other words, there seems to be an opportunity in this general space in real estate where an Apple Watch not only does HRV and other things, but it does so much else. Are you planning to be that, or are you planning to be more like an Oura Ring or Whoop that stays in its lane? I actually, just to put my cards out there, I think different investors would feel different about this. I'd be more excited by the Apple Watch for your ear. But is that the path, or is it more like Whoop or
our path is really Oura Ring on mental wellness. But of course, you mentioned once we are miniaturizing EEG in a very small form factor. So once you add this level of miniaturization, you can think of integrating with glasses, with all kind of other stuff. So you can think of it as a potential exit, potentially.
Yeah,
but
I don't have any of those wearables, by the way. To be clear, I can just use this.
But the fact that I use all of them and I mostly walk around with the Bose earbuds tells you something about
No, I think it's very interesting. So I know we'll probably wrap on time in a second. I'm curious if you can just share a little bit about where you're at on the journey of developing the product and getting it to be live. And you can leave maybe some of the detailed scientific stuff out, but I'm just curious on general path.
Yeah, so we are iterating on the product. We got a working PCB. We are iterating on the industrial design of the wearable. We have an app, working app, with different devices, different EEG devices, including ours. We are constantly improving the algorithms. We have computational neuroscientists in our team that are constantly improving our neuroscience and our algorithms. We have tons of interviews, so we are keep learning, keep improving our product market fit. And our roadmap is to have a prototype we can give to beta testers within the next 6 months, and then in 18 months, ship the product to our customers. And that's what we are seeking the pre-seed round for, is to get to that milestone.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you for
That's
sharing, Antonio.
Yeah,
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Awesome. Switching gears a little bit, before we hopped on stage, you were sharing with me about your son's investment philosophies.
Yeah.
And I think your son's shaping up to be a great investor one day.
I hope he's got options.
Want to tell us in the crowd a little bit about how do I put this? How you're raising your kid, really? I mean, again, seems extraordinarily promising from what he's requesting to do, how he's doing it, the conversations you're having.
So to be clear, I have an 8.5-year-old at home and a 1-year-old. My 1-year-old is not investing yet. She's not doing a whole lot of much.
She'll get there.
She'll get there. So my 8.5-year-old just a few months ago asked me about stocks, and he knows what I do, broadly speaking, and I invest in companies. And there are certain companies I've told him that we're investors in that he thinks is really cool. And so I was talking about investing in stocks one day, and he's like, well, wait, can I buy stocks? And I said, well, I mean, you can make you a custodial account. I said, but you can't really do it in the private market much unless you convince somebody to let you invest in the round. If you could do that, sure, go for it. But in the public markets,
on a cap table.
yeah, but in the public markets, I said, you can make you an account. You can use a Schwab account or whatever. And I said, but you got to decide what you want to invest in. And he came to me with 3 ideas, which I thought were very good. His first 3 ideas were Delta Airlines, because we fly a lot and he likes them. And they're very nice to him. They always let him in the cockpit and they give him those wings. The second one was Target, because there are long lines at checkout every time he goes there. So that seems like it's a good company. And the third, he asked me a question, which was, he had heard me talk about at some point dividends. I don't know why or when he picked this up, but he asked me what companies pay dividends. Like he was like, I just want to understand who pays dividends and how do they work. And so his third purchase, I believe, was Apple, if I remember correctly. He has since also acquired Amazon, and just this morning on the way to the Open wanted to buy something else. And he recently learned that he likes orange soda or Fanta. And so he asked my wife who makes Fanta. And so he bought some Coca-Cola.
He is going after the most raw of signals. And the thing I love about it, when you were telling me this, I was just going, these are smart investments just through a very unique pattern recognition lens. But there's even like the retention aspects of this and the brand building aspects.
He's all about it. He understands. And it's like, buy stuff you love, buy stuff you want to, you use.
Totally. Well, even the Target one is really interesting. He's looking at lines and he's going, okay, there's something here that's like oversubscribed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's been pretty fun to watch this happen. I will say, like a little aside, which I mentioned to you, the way he got this money was somewhat earned, but not really. I guess it technically is earned. He received a $100 bill from my in-laws one day when they were visiting as just like a holiday gift or something. So it went into the drawer in our kitchen, and I needed to give our nanny some money. She had bought some stuff during the day, and I was like, I don't have cash on me. I don't want to Venmo you. I was like, so I went to the drawer and I gave her $100, and I gave her the $100 to cover it all. And I said, it's for last week and this week for things you bought. And so I didn't think much of it. And about a year later, so this is almost 2 years ago. So about a year ago, he asked me where his money was. He looked in the drawer and I was like, shit, like I don't have it. And my wife explained that I had borrowed it. And he said, that's okay. And she said, if Daddy borrowed money, often when people borrow money, they pay interest. And so he asked about interest and we explained it. And she explained straight interest and compounded interest. And he said, well, how much should we charge? And she said, well, I think we should charge 10% a month. And I was like, that sounds pretty steep. Like, you're going to give him a baseball bat too, like if I don't pay. And also she tacked on a penalty because I didn't ask to borrow the money. Ooh. So this was a negative thing. So fast forward, and it was retroactive, to be clear. Yeah. I had borrowed it a year prior. So about 2.5 years later, and anybody here can do the math, it was a $100 bill that I borrowed that added a penalty and then $10 a month for 2.5 years. He showed up asking about investing in stocks, and he's like, I calculated how much you owe me. Mm-hmm. And it's like $700 at the time. It was like $720 or $740. So he called my loan and I had to repay him, and he had me put it in his brokerage account, and he bought stocks with it.
What I love too is it sounds like he wanted it in his brokerage account. He's learning about interest while also continuing.
No, I want to be clear.
Education.
Not only did he want it in his brokerage account, about a year ago I said I'd pay him back, and he said, don't worry about it.
Oh,
he was like, just you can keep it for now. Like, he was doing the math.
That's a shark.
Like, so
that is a shark.
I'm very excited.
He wanted you to owe him a lot of favors. Yes. There's other things probably that you've borrowed.
Oh yeah.
And he's just waiting to the right moment.
I hope he's not watching this. He's gonna be like, wait a minute, there's another 20 in there somewhere.
Your son, what's his name?
Holden.
Holden is smart enough. He's watching the feedback loop.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm gonna get him the first YouTube link.
He's supposed to be asleep. No,
they have the iPad. And,
that's right. That's right. So don't teach your kids interest. This is my lesson out of this. Just let them wait on that one.
Great investor of the future, though. Yeah. Awesome. Shall we welcome the next founder up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Round of applause. All right, Laz, you have a minute to tell us what you're building. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. What are you building?
All right. So I'm Laz Fuentes. I'm the CEO of Score.ai. And at Score.ai, we are building a platform for automating business intelligence for companies. My background, I was a former military officer before that, after that, I was in investment banking. But it wasn't until I got into turnaround work with my clients that I started to see that my methodology, my due diligence allowed me to, very quickly see what was happening. And what I did was look at all the core areas of a company and extract information directly from SaaS tools. And at first I got anxious because I saw that the companies were starting to solve the problems themselves as I would do my due diligence. And what I realized is that whether I was sent by a VC because of a churn issue or a revenue issue, is that these issues weren't specific to, the what they thought they were sending me there for. They were.
That's a minute.
Observability.
Don't worry, round of applause for you. We'll keep talking. All right, go ahead, complete the thought.
So it was an observability issue. So we built Score to solve this problem.
And so I've invested in now 65, maybe 66 companies. I need to go back and look at this deal close. Every single company that I've ever invested in has a both issue with getting the right data out of systems when they need it, and then an issue of matching that data up, making sure it's correct. Whether they're doing it for an investor pitch, they're doing it to make marketing decisions, sales decisions. I'm curious if, number one, you can hone in, help us to understand where do you start in that broad set of, you connect to, it could be web analytics, it could be financial systems, there's lots of areas. Is there one area you start with? And then the second just being, how do you solve that cleanliness, the accuracy problem when it comes to this?
So we kind of jump over that entire process. What I saw and when I decided to build this was what I observed was that the investors were investing in data scientists, and that when you give money to data scientists, they build tools that invariably need data scientists. So what do you have? You have to build ETL. That's a certain set of people. You have to build, data warehousing. That's a certain set of people. You need data analysis. That's a certain set of people and tools for each of those. And then you need some sort of data visualization layer. Yeah. So all of these layers, it's like a stack. And what I would find when I got into companies is that, one, they were always trying to figure that out, and it was very difficult. And how I solved the problem was by just extracting. In my due diligence, I would just extract, because as a turnaround person, when I show up, people are afraid. Yeah. Right? They think I'm there to chop heads, and that's not at all the case. I'm there to solve the problem. And so I kind of created my due diligence process to go in and bypass the individuals, and I just look at the SaaS tools. And if you consider from 2013 to 2020, that period, from 2013 to 2020, the growth of SaaS is growing. It made it easier and easier when I'm looking at sales, marketing, finance, product engineering, customer success, and operations. Those are the 6 core areas of every company. And so, combined with just plugging in username and password, true plug and play, eliminating the need for that entire stack, eliminating the need for data scientists, data engineers, data analysts completely. What we feel we could do is provide that, and this is our ICP right now, is we're targeting Series B to D that are experiencing the pause in capital markets, that we could help extend their runway, right? Yeah. Because the average Series B company is spending about $4 million in salaries, and one person leaves and that entire stack becomes a paperweight.
Can I pause for a sec? How? So I think I've heard, log in, but I still haven't experienced, kind of like how because you skip that line. Yeah.
So the how is, we're standardizing. So KPIs are KPIs. Revenue is going to be revenue. And you don't, when you have to cleanse data from different sources, it's usually, the operations are there. And everyone's working off of these tools. The average Series A companies has over 130 SaaS tools. And this is, I did this when I heard Lemkin over at SaaStr say 100% of the company is now being run off of cloud-based SaaS tools. And I was like, you know what? We can plug those tools in, extract on a day-to-day basis, and just enough is enough.
Yeah.
Right. As a soldier, I could, I use this analogy, I don't need to know the nutrient content of every blade of grass to move 140 people across a field. I need to know 5-10 bits of information and I can take and move. Right. And it's the same way with running a company. I need to know as the C-suite, the just enough information in those six core areas. Say again?
Give me one example. Give me a hero story.
So Zendesk, right? I always blow people's minds because I go right to Zendesk or Freshdesk or one of those, right? Zendesk ticket comes in, Zendesk ticket closes. The delta between those, you can literally see as it is increasing and draw a straight line to Stripe and see churn go up.
Yeah.
And see revenues go down. You can go to draw another line to Salesforce and see the slowdown in the funnels, right? Because something is upsetting people and you start to see it all over the place. And like this, so why we're score.ai is we have a very deep correlation technology that's going through and causation algorithms that are with an 18-year veteran of IBM Watson that's driving all of this so that we can tell you not only if things are going to go up or things are going to go down based on all the historical information that's going on, but we can also tell you what's driving that across all your various tools, which parameters specifically.
How do you sell this today? What's that MVP? Is it something a Series B, Series C company, they pay you X amount of dollars to tell them what's broken? Or do you sell your thing as a SaaS product now on top of the other SaaS products, or just package it all?
I can tell you how I'm selling it, and I can tell you what's coming out of the woodwork.
Sure.
Because there's two different things there. We're selling it as a subscription product, with X amount of tools that you pump through the system. And we launched in early June. We have over 240 companies on the platform. We're about to, the revenues will start. I gave a lot of freebies to get people on. The revenues will start kicking in now this month. And it's the message is clear. Look, this is not a vitamin. This is pain. This is real pain. $4 million a year in salaries when you're having difficulties raising capital. We can help extend that while giving you full visibility. Because here's the other thing, is that you're not getting full visibility with that $4 million spend of your Series B or $7 million spend of your Series D or $12 million spend of your Series C or $12 million spend of your Series D. You're just not, because it's not enough. And if you can plug in, standardize the KPIs across all of the tools, for you and your team, the C-suite, and we're unlimited seats. For you and your team, you can see everything that's happening just enough and then ask question, right? So if you were going to write the book on SCORE, just enough is enough is the title of the book.
I don't think I'm confused, but I want to point out how I could have been. I have, at different points in your pitch, thought you could be business intelligence, revenue intelligence, or spend management because of how you talk about the business. The third one is actually probably where you most talk. You sound like you're talking in spend management, which I don't think you are. I think you're actually business intelligence. Is that correct?
We are business intelligence.
Okay. The reason you sound more like specifically spend management is because you talk in salaries and how many SaaS tools exist. And I know why you're doing it, right? Your point is there's salary wastage, there's tool wastage, you have too many seats, but you're not getting the value of the seats. But you kind of need to say that. Right? When you stay a little bit too much and you're wasting $4 million, a Series A spends this, a Series B spend that. You said spend so much, and I get it, right? Because you're saying, hey, the spend is not giving you the juice. But think about your pitch a little bit as I think I understood pretty quickly which bucket to put you in, but I kept actually getting re-distracted of, hold on, am I wrong? Is he actually spend management? Because you were so focused on what you think they're getting wrong. The way I would recommend kind of refining that is to, and at some point you said the word revenue in such a direct way that I kind of, okay, fine. I'm gonna stay on that lane. But help me get to that lane and stay in it a little longer, as an example. When you talk about standardizing KPIs, name a few, right? And so you might say, for example, across Zendesk, Stripe, blank, blank, blank. You'll pick 5 typical revenue-based SaaS tools. All of them count versions of churn, retention, LTV, et cetera, differently. But all of those should actually be these 3 KPIs. And so we take the data from all of these things and we use AI and normalization and best institutional knowledge, and we come up with a correlation and a score that gives you your understanding of your net revenue retention, or whatever else it might be, or your relationship to churn, whatever it might be, and gives you actionable recommendations or visibility. I don't know which one, but you see how, again, that hero story that I was asking for would very much centralize me in the upside of your product, as opposed to where I think you're living right now. You're trying to focus me on the downside of the existing world. You do need to show me that downside.
I do think about the pain a lot.
Yeah.
So it's because it's kind of very situational, right? It's right now.
And I would say that in part, as you help to clarify that, I think the second part I would just say is getting to the business model, the buyer, and the size of that spend, but I'm using it in your opportunity as in what they're going to spend on you, I think is really important early on. So help me in the context of the tens of thousands of companies that fall into this bucket, Series A, B, C, D. Are they going to spend $100 a month, $1,000 a month, $100,000 a year? And sort of what leads you to believe that? Right now you're selling it as a subscription. You were saying maybe you're getting pulled to sell it differently. So I'd be curious what that is. But
we're getting a lot of interest on the buy side to do pre-investment due diligence.
Yeah, so project-based.
And KPI validation and post-investment monitoring of milestones. So that's one. We're talking to a team there. And we're getting consultants that want to use this for turnaround.
And so for all of that, I appreciate that you didn't say that earlier.
Yeah.
I would stick to the companies and
That's right.
I was so I think you're selling subscriptions to just really quick lay of the land for when you're giving the pitch of like, this is the market. And again, you may have a slide on this that you'd show if you're pitching, but I think even when you're doing it here, it's like very quickly hone in and like, this is the buyer. This is the amount they're going to spend to solve this problem.
Right.
This is how many of them there are. And I think that for a lot of this, it helps clarify it. It's a big category. Like, as I said at the beginning of my feedback, there isn't a company out there who thinks they've solved the data problem. And that means they know there are problems in every area of the business that you mentioned. And yet, no one has solved it holistically. So maybe you're on that path. Maybe you've solved it.
And I'll just say, to add on to that, and I think this is where you want to get to where I'm coming to right now as quickly as possible. Normalization utilizing AI is actually really compelling as this method, not just because, okay, great, apply AI to the problem, but because this problem does not go away over time. There will always be more vendors. There will always be different tools and different people. No matter if we all shrink our sizes of companies and use a lot of AI inside of our teams, we'll use 17 different vendors, even for just marketing. In other words, there's a forever problem as to how we as humans operate inside these businesses that has not been solved and won't be solved, other than with the attachment of a product like this.
Yeah, genie's not going back in the bottle.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And if you define that for me a little more clearly, then I go, oh, yeah, I could imagine this being the co-pilot. We've had a few AI pitches today, and some of them have been co-pilots, and we've encouraged them to be others. Yours should be a co-pilot in a lot of ways, and you've talked like that, right? Giving the C-suite visibility.
I don't even talk about the fact that we do have Gen AI, we have Claude attached to what we're doing. It gives recommendations based on looking at all, and we haven't made it NLP. You literally click on sales, and it tells you everything that's going on across all your tools, marketing, finance, all of them. And then tells you, hey, you should target these areas. Do you want to speak to everyone? Anyone?
Well, cool.
Really promising. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Here's a question for you. When you think about your past there and then the transition to being a VC, I'm curious, what do you think is the way that a founder can get not as good, but get closer to the intoxication? Because you pointed out that that's the key ingredient that he had, right? It's like the ability to persuade, to almost get you to fall in love with him in some amount of time. But for someone who doesn't have that naturally, because that's all reporting, all news, all books, all shows seem to indicate he just was that always, and this was his first time putting it together in the right way. But if you're meeting a founder who doesn't have that natural charisma and even the natural kind of operational brain to understand how to use it, how would you advise them and say, well, if you want to build, WeWork style generational business, here are some actionable differences or changes or habits that you can form?
That's a great question. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that in an interview before, but I would say there there are two ways I think to answer it. The first one is it's actionable. Like I would say, I mentioned this earlier, but an improv class, like treat being a great founder like any other executive role you're ever going to have, right? Like the head of marketing for a company didn't get there because they woke up one day and said, I'm going to be head of marketing. They worked to get there, I hope. Or let's take a head of engineering. Maybe that's an easier one. But they started probably as an individual contributor and an engineer, and they learned that. Then they learned the art of managing. They maybe took
watch for
classes.
patterns in the world.
Yeah, and they learn from mentors, whatever. I think to be a founder, one of the things is you surround yourself with other mentors. But there are things you can do, skills you can learn. There is the ability to improv. There's creative storytelling. There's analytics. We were just talking about it in the last pitch. Learn business fundamental things. You don't have to get an MBA, but you can take an online course in just accounting and finance, like know how a balance sheet should look. Like don't show up and not have that. That's sort of more the actionable stuff. The magic of a founder like Adam, there's no one size fits all. So like the Pied Piper effect that I'm talking about can come from lots of people. I was in API at Drexel, and Mark Zuckerberg happened to be an API member, Harvard, I guess, before he dropped out. And at our convention, I remember he showed up. I just was reminded, as it popped up in like a throwback thing, whatever, that he showed up at one of our conventions my freshman year in college, a couple of years into Facebook, and he got on stage. And it was the funniest thing because he was like hoodie up exactly as you imagine, kind of quiet spoken, stuttered a lot. Honestly, I don't think anybody in the crowd sat there and was like, oh my God, this guy's going to build one of the most valuable companies in the world. But at the time, he was a really compelling entrepreneur. He built a really cool company. We were all using the product on campuses all over the world. We were meeting dates through that. We were meeting friends through that. And so his version at the time of being compelling, he left that room and he offered to like buy drinks for everybody if they wanted to go to the lobby of the hotel. That brought people there. It goes back to the free alcohol. It does work. But people wanted to hear him. He was a different kind of founder. My only point is it's not just Adam. It's not just Travis from Uber. It's not just Mark Zuckerberg. It's all different types. And so I think you need to find your own lane. So you mentioned like you don't have that charisma. Like if you're a founder who doesn't have it, that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
Like you have to find your lane and what's going to be compelling, no matter what your job as a founder and CEO is to convince, if you want to raise capital, convince investors to invest in you irrationally early, convince people to join your team irrationally early, convince people to buy your product irrationally early. Like, that's it. You need to figure out those three things.
Well, what I love what you're saying is there's a flavor to it where, in Mark's case, it was being such a nerd about it.
Codes sometimes today. Like, people love that about him.
Well, there are people that I've met where I'm like, oh, it's that charisma bone. But then there's other people who it's like a particular version of the work that they do literally as an IC. And you'd be like, man, this person's such a great marketer. I believe that they can do this thing. It can even be that practical. To your point, again, finding your flavor, leaning to the sharp edge rather than trying to win at somebody else's game.
Travis Kalanick famously was like no barrier is too high or too thick. Like, I don't care if the rule of law is against me. We're going to solve this. And yeah, he cut corners and did some illegal stuff. I mean, you can see it in the books and stuff, but that was his drive. And there's a certain kind of person who was like,
well, I think the thing you're referencing for people who don't know that story is this wasn't just true with Uber. He had a startup before, what was it called? Red something. It was some sort of like music LimeWire type competitor where he's demonstrating this like go-to-market legal operational muscle of like, I see the rules and I'm going to find my way around them kind of.
Yeah, you talk to some of the other employees at Uber and they went up against the TLC and the law here in New York of taxis. They weren't allowed to operate. Yeah. And their earliest employees in the New York City office, they would follow that man off a cliff. They were like, that's the kind of leader I want. That's what they needed. That may not have worked for other businesses.
Love it. All right, shall we welcome the last founder?
Let's do it.
All right, round of applause. Last founder up. Zeba, are you ready? Before we actually get to the pitch, first of all, a newcomer to New York, so round of applause for that.
Came like 6 days ago.
6 days ago?
6 days ago.
Wow.
And has come to, this is your second Phrasency, right? All right, Zeba, are you ready to wrap us up with your minute pitch? Go ahead. What are you building?
6 years ago, when I was 15 years old, growing up in Tajikistan, I had a dream. I wanted to study abroad. And they were consulting firms, YouTube videos, but my need was clear. I wanted to find a student who goes to a school which I want to go to and who studies the major which I intend to study. My educational journey led me to Singapore, China, Abu Dhabi, where that became even clearer. Parents in Asia and Middle East want to send their kids to a place they know what that is like to study, get real insights, and find a way to differentiate their essays. And exactly for these reasons, we have developed Prepier, a marketplace where high schoolers and their parents can book calls directly with the college students across different verticals for the admissions insights.
Well done. Under a minute.
All right, so tell me a little bit about the business, sort of underneath all that. It's matchmaking? It's sort of, just help me understand the model.
Because I studied in so many different countries, I got the network of students who are willing to become mentors for other people and who are experienced in different verticals, say scholarships, extracurriculars, essays. And the way how it works is that we recruit mentors based on our vetted strategy. And once mentors are recruited, they get a cut for their time. And then we have another cut as a marketplace that helps us to go. And doing that, we start with high schoolers to undergrad. It also could be students who are in grade 7 and 8 who are considering summer schools. Then it could become also a place where undergrads go to masters and they come to our platform to do it.
In today's business, parents or the parents pay for it? That's the idea?
Today's business is parents or high schoolers themselves pay. Our customer interviews are showing that parents really want it. They even want something further, which is parent to parent as well.
Yeah.
So in parallel to this, we are also developing the second version of this platform as well.
You know, it's interesting. This is just like an information asymmetry and process asymmetry that a lot of people are victim to, which is, for agency is a lot about that mission of solving information and process asymmetry for people. So I really empathize with the user in this case. One of the challenges when there's information and process asymmetry is oftentimes it's also because the information and the processes are fuzzy. So for example, in job search or career, it's not just hard because the processes are bad. The processes are bad somewhat because the subject matter is hard. Like companies don't know how to hire. It's not that they're trying to hire badly. It's hard. People don't job search poorly on purpose.
Sure.
They just don't know what they're doing. And then it's different for different industries, different for different people. I feel like there's a similar dynamic here. Information and process asymmetries are usually a leading indicator of some kind of mess. How does the mess either complicate or make your business more interesting? In other words, is this mess being solved? Will this mess always exist?
Is the mess a moat?
Yeah, is the mess a moat? Yeah, exactly. So, talk about that.
Yeah. So I think for us, the way how to try to leverage the mess is that we added a function called like language fluency, where people will be able to choose their language. People can choose the university. People can choose the majors that they want people to come from. It's just one part of it. The second part is application process is very complicated. There are 13 different verticals. And what admissions consultants try to do, they try to sell end-to-end, which then creates crimsons of the world, 10, 15K that parents in Singapore have to pay for because that's the only solution right now. Or they fly in, that spend even more money and time. So what we do, we broke down the whole application process into different verticals. And in our interviews, we made sure that students who claim to have expertise in that vertical, prove that they have actually expertise in that vertical. And then we put them across different functions. And our website, the marketplace, is very easy to use. And I think this is the way how we kind of help students and parents to find each other.
There's two things I want to say to that. One is the point about how much people spend, I think, needs to be part of your core pitch. Like, I think it shocks people sometimes to learn how much there are parents and families spending in this area. And also, you can tell as part of that story, it's the obvious next thought that someone should have, but it actually takes a second of like, how many people wish they could spend that much in these places and wish they could access and probably are deserving of the access and the information. And I think that could be like a compelling kind of attachment to the pitch.
One of the reasons you pay, my kids are too young to have paid for this yet, but the one of the reasons that people pay these high-end consultants, as far as I know, is the end-to-end hand-holding, though. That sort of there's an audience who likes to learn, And I think there's most people that are lazy. And so the audience that likes to learn is pretty small when it comes to this. So parents that are like, we want to learn how to get our kids into school better. We're going to talk to 13 experts, let's say, or whatever. There's a group who are like, I want to book a spot in that school for my kid. And so I'm curious how you have broken down the market between those two, and sort of how do you go from the group that I believe is smaller, which is the like, teach me how to fish so I can send my couple kids to school. I'll take all this time and energy, but I'll pay a lot less money, versus there's obvious demand for the person. 15 grand felt like a deal compared to what some friends have paid. So
the way how I'm going to answer your question is by telling you the interview that I had with Singaporean counseling and admission services. I used to think of them as our competitors. They told me that they want our service because their service is already expensive. So parents would want to pay a bit more just so they get our database.
Right.
And the way how they want to leverage us is that whenever a parent comes to them and says, my kid wants to go and study at NYU, the next question is, tell me XYZ, what is NYU like?
Yeah.
And the counselor, the information comes from YouTube videos, from websites, and from alumni who are very limited network of people. Well, what we got is very, very different. So I think consultants actually want us because it makes them look more proficient in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And parents who don't have 15, 20K for their admissions service also want us because it's basically what you want in your college admissions process is not copy-paste model. And typically parents are avoiding to do that because they know that if somebody taught XYZ student how to get there, Yale, Harvard, NYU admissions officers saw that model. And the second, the third time, it won't necessarily get you somewhere.
Right.
So then I think for us, our marketplace is very interesting because say your kid wants to understand sports at NYU. They can come, they can pick sports admission, they can meet people who got into NYU because of sports, and they can get the insights that a real student who goes to NYU gets, and those insights can be used in their essays, which will make their application of that specific student a lot more personalized.
Right.
And that personalization is what gets somebody to a school, which many consultants cannot offer because simply you have to have those real specific insights about specific niches that the school offers.
I think one thing I would caution you on is at an early stage, it's often very hard to build a product or a business for more than one audience. And I can imagine ways that selling to the consultants for them to upsell may impact your product different than selling to the end user. And so I think while I like the idea that its consultants would find it valuable, if I were you, I would push very hard to explain why you're going to win in the consumer side first, in the sort of, we're going to go mass, we're going to go broader. I do just worry about that sort of disparity in both product and business model, and just it's a distraction. It's hard.
Exactly.
So, I'm not saying you're doing that. I like that you shared it here, but I'm just giving that feedback.
So that's why I think our first goal is to be very close to our consumers. Yeah. And the approach is not like me being in New York and leading the whole marketing. Because I lived in those countries, I have people on the ground who are doing very specific creative marketing tactics that get people to come to our website. Yeah. Because I don't think I'm going to get my first 1,000 customers from Instagram and Facebook. I think it will come because somebody somehow hears about us in person.
Ambassadors on the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm curious about long-term for something like this is, does the information change in a way that's helpful to you or hurtful to you? So, talk about how college admissions change, how the international trends have changed. You're reliant on, presidential elections impact how many people want to come here. Where does the zeitgeist impact your customers and the desire for this as a service? How might relationship to higher education, even in a longer term, if you're building a venture-backed business, you got to take that very long view. Yeah. What's the story over the next 5-10 years?
For the next 5 to 10 years, I think in the West, people are starting to question the value of bachelors, right? But having, I am from Asia myself, and having lived in China and Singapore, I can see that this is not the mentality that will change soon in that region. So which means that people would always want studying in top schools in the US. Another factor that I saw in China, there were many American students who were reaching out to me to find out ways to study in China, ways to study in Australia. And because we also have mentors from top Chinese schools, top Chinese Australian universities, it's not like it just goes from Asia to West, but I also see a pattern where there are many students who are trying to find exchange programs from the West to the other parts of the world.
And I do, to be clear, I totally have seen this trend. I spent a lot of time over in the Middle East, and this trend of people wanting to come send their kids to the US, I think that's right. In the next 5 to 10 years, that probably doesn't change. I do think there's a question, it goes back to something you said about this messy sort of thing, this sort of, kind of broken system, in my opinion. You agree or disagree, it doesn't really matter. But in my opinion, I think it's a broken system that we sort of have this crazy amount of unique work that goes into trying to land a spot in that school. You have to be creative. You have to spend a lot of money. You got to get it just right. It's a little bit like in recruiting too. It's 100%. Like now 1,000 people apply for a job. You need to like game the system, get the right keywords in so you make it past the first pass, all that. Do you view, at least in the US schools, because you understand this well, are they trying to change any of that? Or they're totally happy with that status quo?
Can you tell me more about changing any of what specifically?
Yeah, the sort of the automated sort of filtering that we do, which requires you to know the nuance to, if you want to apply as a sports person, like what should you put in your essay in order to make it past that admissions person? To me, if you're great at sports and there's a sports program, you should be like, okay, you're great at sports, you come in. No, you need to make sure you apply in this way. You talk about these topics. Like it's a very gamified system. That's why these consultants exist.
In other words, like, is there potential that these very broken games that are causing the need for this get solved?
Yeah, so less that people don't want to come to the US, but that the universities in the US say, like, yeah, we need to get with the times too. We can't make this a really convoluted process. Like, we need to make this something that is more accessible.
Yeah. So what the US schools are trying to do is that they're trying to host more webinars, make more ChatGPT-like systems that answers questions about the university, right? But that is not solving a student need, because the answer of the chat box or like a chatbot or the webinars are always trying to sell the university. And as a parent or as a high schooler who is spending time and energy and money for your next 4 years,
you don't want... I think the fix here could be to the process itself. So let me state it slightly differently. If today one of the reasons this is necessary is college admissions is so stupid in how they analyze and the process is broken and requires tricks, is there a chance the colleges themselves, the admissions, the people coming up with these processes and systems are going to decide over the next 5 years to say, actually, this is all a mess. We're taking it back. Here's something good that doesn't require complicated application processes and prior knowledge and institutional knowledge. Is there a chance that these systems get self-revitalized?
I always like to go back and look at the history of what happened with the education system and look at what happened in the past 25 years with the college admissions consulting. It didn't change. And what they're trying to do, they're trying to add small things like more webinars, more AI in their system. But fundamentally, the problem is in the fact that students, they need to find a way to differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
Consultants are not offering that. And I don't think the problem is with the university. I think the problem is, if that's the case, what does a student do in this specific ocean to stand out somehow?
Yeah.
And I feel like in that standing out part, that's where my platform comes in and helps the students with that.
Something I realized as you were talking, so let me lay out my politics on this issue for a second. I love colleges and universities. I think that the Teal Fellowship is wrong for the students who decide to drop out of high school. I think that we've decided to vilify debt when we should vilify instead bad education. We should also vilify debt, but like that's not the problem. The problem is, what does your money get you in higher education? I think we should actually send everyone to a 4-year undergraduate program, because I think it complexifies people and makes them more well-rounded and better citizens of the world. Okay, that in mind, the trend in the zeitgeist is what I mentioned earlier, which is there's a questioning of higher education. There's a whole society of people who are questioning whether it's worth it, what's worth it, internationally, to your point, both going abroad and coming back in. And I think part of your story can be, no matter what happens with this trend, people are going to be more discerning moving forward. How they spend their money, how they get into these programs, what scholarships they can get, where should they study. For better or worse, in my mind worse, the old way is going away. So it wasn't that you could just apply to the top 20 institutions, when I was going to college. That's going to be more confusing moving forward. And so students and parents are going to seek more real information, not just to get in, but to understand. And this is part of, your pitch that I think is maybe underrated. It can be a little bit distracting, perhaps, because it doesn't have the same transactional value, but also getting that lived experience from the student, right, as either the parent or the student, saying, hey, I want to know about someone who went to NYU or Stanford or whatever. Is this worth it? How should I spend my time? Not just how can I get in? And I think you can really latch onto that trend. And the other thing is a problem that's very existent today, but if you're telling a broader and longer story, this is where I think you can get into that and say, here's where higher education is being questioned, and over time, we can be a solution for people who are questioning whether it's valuable for them.
I think the systematic thing is an interesting question. Like, if somebody showed up there and said, I want to be an auto mechanic, like, that's my goal, and I want to know more about if NYU is a good place for me, like, you have an opportunity to say, actually, here is a way to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe NYU is not the place to go spend a ton of money. Here's another path. Like, it doesn't have to be the college. I think you simplify it by like, you've got this network of
routing.
People, I'd be curious about, I guess maybe this is the last question I have, just I know we're probably running low on time because I'm long-winded. But as you think about the model expanding over time, and so you mentioned sort of that it's high school or finding college, and it's college going to a master's, it could be earlier going, where for the next 1 to 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, are you really focused on that high school or going to college? Is that the solution you want to nail? And how big is that?
I'll tell you more about that. Before I go there, do you want to guess how much a 30-minute session with an Ivy League student would cost on my platform?
I don't want to guess because there's always a dumb answer.
Like, you have the reference of, like,
I think I know, so you have to go.
You have the reference of, like, Crimson 10K, right? Like, now look the preppier, like what we are building. Do you want to guess how much it would cost?
$100.
It's $25 for, like, 30 minutes call with, like, Yale student.
Yeah.
Right now, to answer your question of what's happening, we are leveraging AI and trying to make college admissions a lot more data science based, because right now it's very subjective.
Yeah.
But as a person who wants to build that in the future, next 1 year, I cannot start with another AI solution because that's where everybody else is building. What's lacking is people having a huge community on both ends, both the supply and the demand side. And that's why I'm building the marketplace that will help me to do that. But then the question becomes, once I have so many users and then hundreds and hundreds of mentors, what do I do with that data? I think it's a very fun question to explore. And I don't want to have my answer for it because I want my customers to tell me what the next step for me is. But I think for the next 1 year, my goal is to expand that, because right now I'm in New York. I was in Stanford 2 weeks ago. Like, it's easier for me to get access to top mentors having lived in so many countries than to many other consultants who are just in Asia. So I'm leveraging that uniqueness to be able to do good on the supply side, and the demand side will be good with the ambassadors on the ground.
Thanks for sharing. Good job.
Thank you.
Those are our 7 founders, Jesse.
There you go.
What a journey, right? Here's the fun little cap to it we do. We each pick our favorite. I have mine, but you go first.
Can I pick 2?
Yeah.
I like the development platform, the first one. It's a customer journey that I understand well. Engineers need this technology to build. It's very convoluted. I will admit that when I first saw Twilio years ago, I did not get why it was going to be so big, and I was totally wrong. So that was one. And I like the lockbox one. I think that it's there's a very clear need, a very clear consumer value prop. And I'm not worried about the long-term, can you get Amazon and others to pay for it? I actually think your idea about sponsorship is a great one. I would absolutely pursue that early on to decrease the cost of boxes.
Give me advisor shares.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, those were the 2 that sort of fell the heaviest.
I'm going to do a big if at the front of mine. If the science works, the wearable device is really interesting to me because I think all these other devices have failed so far at giving people actionable, or it turns out over time the actionable advice hasn't been as actionable or reliable or consistent. They're even different between different devices. You can find probably thousands of Reddit threads about like, I used an Aura and I used a Whoop and I used an Apple Watch. Why do they all tell me something different about my sleep? And so if it's true that the science of that works out, I think that's fascinating. And I think that could be a really a massive game changer for the feedback loop. Get it? The feedback.
There you go.
And so there's a lot to that device that I think, again, if that works, could be the first of its kind to give people even micro tweaks would be more valuable than we've gotten out of that space so far. And I would build, though, the Apple Watch version of it, like the Apple Watch for your ear. I would suggest to the founder the targeted devices might be easier to build, might be, the more focused devices might be able to accomplish more technically, but I think you can get a lot more people to use the paradigm shift if you take a broader approach, even if it's just music, by the way. Maybe it's not the Apple Watch, maybe it's more like the AirPod. Or, again, Bose has, these wraparounds in a couple other companies. But that's really interesting to me, Aware. With that, one more thing from you. Biggest takeaway. Heard 7 pitches. Anything that you think is the lesson for everyone to?
My thing is always, I am always awestruck by the breadth of ideas that not only people have, but that they execute on. I will take the last pitch for example. I think that we actually have we didn't get into it. We actually have a very big disagreement in our view of the higher education system and its impact on us as people. But even letting that set aside, the idea of charting your journey, your course in life, and having to make one of the biggest decisions you're ever going to make in your life when you're 15, 16, 17 years old without transparency of information and data, it's like such an unimaginable place that we live. And yet most people in the world live in that. They do a college tour if they're lucky and they can afford it and their parents can afford to take off for days on end. Like, that's the best case. And outside of that, it's like you're on Reddit threads, you're on Facebook, you're on whatever, the next social network, and you're asking people like, my brother went to that school, like he really liked it. So you ask my wife who moved to the US from the Philippines and Saudi Arabia, she picked her school based on her brother's friend went to school in Minnesota. So she moved to Minnesota. And she loved it. It turned out she loved it, but like she moved from from the Philippines at the time to Minnesota. She didn't have a winter jacket. Like she didn't even have like any concept. And so that idea, and then you exacerbate that 1,000 times. So like that is yet another like, holy moly, like I can't believe that doesn't exist and isn't at scale and won't solve a lot of problems. So I'm always fascinated by that.
Love that. By the way, just at that point, I went to WashU in St. Louis. It was either that or Carnegie Mellon, but my sister was doing her MD PhD at WashU, and I did a visit that, anyone who's been to WashU knows it's like one of the most awesome campuses, the on-campus life. They spend a lot of money there. And the triviality of that decision, between those two universities. And then I go to your point, also her pitch, is a really fascinating thing. 2 people with different philosophies on higher education, yet we both like her solution for different or slightly adjacent, but slightly different reasons. That's when you know that your go-to-market's going to be a little bit easier. If you can get people's sympathies from different directions towards a problem, yours being an analysis and a filtering of value and like, is this good for me? Mine being hey, if this can help people sort this problem and get more rewards out of it, I'm also down for it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really compelling part of a pitch.
Yeah.
My takeaway, for a lot of these folks, getting to user experience faster. People have made fun of me because people who've been to any more than 2 episodes of this have heard me ask founders about the user experience of what they're building. I think it's underrated as part of pitches, and some of the clarity we got from some of these founders only went from after I went, okay, hold on, put me in the middle of your product. And so getting to that as much as you can as part of a pitch is key.
I think it's important in part of a pitch. I will say that in my like hierarchy of like when I'm going to invest in something, it's founder market fit and like special earned secret is 10 steps ahead of anything else. And for me, the second biggest, and I asked it to a few different founders, is like market opportunity and size. Help me size what this is going to be short, medium, and long term. Market trends, tailwinds, all that matter a ton. To me, the product is the third out of those 3. It is very helpful in hearing it so that you understand what the person is doing. Exactly. I agree with that. Yeah. But from are you going to be successful?
100% agree.
Like founder market fit and size of market and
I like this refinement. So let me refine my advice because I think this is key. User experience insofar as it is such a clarifying and oftentimes required clarifying moment for some pitches that otherwise are high level. Yeah. Because founders often live in this like hoity-toity mission, good for them, me too, but then like bring us all to some reality. Yeah. And that can be really valuable.
No, it's great.
Jesse, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for all of your insights and the feedback. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's also give a shout out to all the founders, the brave founders who got up on stage and gave their best pitch.
It was awesome.
Shout out to the Feedback Loop team as well.
For staying late.
And the folks in the crowd staying late and the team staying late. Round of applause. And one more thing, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. For some reason, Amazon Music has podcasts to it too. We're on Amazon Music. There's an RSS feed. Would love your support. Smash that like, the subscribe button, turn on notifications, comment. We want to grow this thing and get as many founders as possible, not only on stage, but viewing this thing around the world. See you next week. Adios.